Hello, welcome back to Green TV, where I love to introduce you to the Solutionaries. This series is called Meet the Solutionaries, and I'm very pleased and proud to have three of them from Florida on with us today.
I've seen our waters go from pristine gardens to literally just our reefs are essentially dead rock piles.
Electoral issues, campaign financing issues, legalized bribery is the bottom line.
We've got 1,000 springs, 800 of them are impaired. We've got nearly 1 million acres of estuaries and 9,000 miles of streams and rivers contaminated with fecal bacteria.
Our coral reefs have already deteriorated from when I was a kid, from 70% hard coral growth down to 3 to 5%. This is essentially just going to wipe out every little bit that's left.
If you continue to think that the best in politicians, the best in businesses, and the best in, and things like that, and hope for the best, we're not going to move the needle.
Welcome, all of you. Captain Karl Deigert. It's really a pleasure to finally have you on the Green TV show that we have here. And also Joe Bonasia, who is your partner in crime. You're both working on Florida rights to nature issues and specifically rights to clean water and healthy water. And Melissa Martin is the co-author of something called the Green Amendment, which sounds awfully interesting. And I can't wait to hear about that. We met Karl, in Florida and Miami about a year and a half ago in person. And I hope I don't embarrass you when I say that one of the things that most impressed me about you was you teared up when you were talking about the state of Florida's water. And people should be emotional because we're losing nature and we are part of nature and we need this precious planet. So I've really wanted to have you on since then. We did a quick interview. I was there with my colleague, Aria McKenna, but we were on a boat and it was kind of a party atmosphere. This is a little quieter, a little more serious, but we still have fun because otherwise it's too depressing, right? But you guys are all about solutions and you're focused on things that matter: clean air, clean water, nature. And we'll start with you, Karl, Captain Karl Deigert. What got you involved with this most important and pressing issues?
So I've been in Florida since 1986. I've been coming since I was in diapers. I've seen our waters go from pristine gardens to literally just our reefs are essentially dead rock piles. I fulfilled a full life dream of owning a little waterfront motel in Matlacha, Florida, where I was entertaining people around the world and taking them on boat rides. And severe algae blooms got so bad that I decided to sell that business, that I could no longer take my clients on these trips and watch them try to fish from a dock in my backyard in polluted waters. That's how bad it's gotten. So seeing the drastic changes, exponential changes in our water quality, I started digging in on how to fix this. I was first asked to go to Tallahassee as a representative, but then I discovered what's called the Rights of Nature Network movement, where citizens through petition ballot initiatives can create the language, write the law, have the people petition to get it on the ballot and put it in place. And once I found out that this process was possible, that's where I decided to devote my energy. This process was successful in Florida, in Orange County, through teamwork. In Orange County in 2020, people voted to give all the waters of that county constitutionally framed personified rights. To
Orange County, Florida. There's an Orange County in California too.
That's right, Orange County, Florida. Most to be represented like voiceless children would be in court. People of that county can do that. Well, once our state legislature got wind of that, about 3 months prior to the people with an 89% approval rating voting that law into place and putting it on the books, our state legislature preempted that law and preempted any jurisdiction in the state of Florida from creating such laws. So with that, legal minds greater than myself, like Melissa's, and her associates that helped write the Right to Clean Water Green Amendment. It is a green amendment because it's directly into our Bill of Rights in the state constitution. It's a little bit different than what's other green amendments that are being run across the United States, but it effectively achieves the same issues, except Florida is a single issue state. We can only talk about clean water, we can't talk about clean water and clean air at the same time. So it's very specific. I'll let Mel dig in on all that. So what was the response to the preemption? The response was that we would petition for a fundamental human right to clean water, which basically achieves the same things that we wanted to do with rights of nature. We're just giving the rights to ourselves instead of the ecosystem. So since we last met in 2021, we have garnered massive support across statewide with the organizations. And I'll let Joe take it and explain what's going on.
Great. I'm so glad to hear good news. Thanks, Joe, for joining us.
Yeah. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about the Orange County Charter Amendment and especially that preemption. Karl noted that the state legislature did act very, very swiftly. A couple of things to mention about that. They would not have acted so swiftly or at all to preempt the authority of local governments throughout the entire state to pass similar laws if they didn't fear how effective a rights-based approach to environmental protection would be. If they thought it was going to be a toothless law, they would not have acted. They must feel that it would be very, very effective. I think it's also worth noting why they would pass a preemption that obviously was so popular with the people. Well, part of the problem here in Florida, it's not the only one, but it's the primary one, is that special interests have undue influence over our state legislature and therefore over our environmental policies. We see this, there's a long history of this, everybody knows about the influence of the sugar industry, but more recently, this past legislative session, we've had what was called the sprawl bill, which many environmental organizations say has pretty much been a death knell to smart growth in Florida. That was very much promoted by the real estate industry. Governor DeSantis signed a new bill that is going to allow for a study of radioactive toxic phosphogypsum in our roadways. EPA has already said this is going to be harmful to human beings and is going to be harmful to both surface and ground waters. Who was behind that? Well, it was the mining industry, phosphate industry. So big industries here have a lot of influence over our waters, and they suffer. My experience in talking about this over the last few years, people know our waters are bad. They don't appreciate how bad they are. We've got 1,000 springs, 800 of them are impaired. We've got nearly 1 million acres of estuaries and 9,000 miles of streams and rivers contaminated with fecal bacteria. You've seen, I've seen, everybody has seen the terrible photos of dead sea life on beach shorelines because of red tide. Everyone's seen the pictures about blue-green algae bloom. Everyone knows about the dying manatees. The state has not been fulfilling its responsibility to the people of Florida to protect our waters adequately. And so the folks in Orange County, having lost faith in the state and tired of their dirty waterways, took action upon themselves. The state came in. That left us with no choice really other than to go over the heads of the legislature with this amendment. We've mentioned green amendment. There are other states that have green amendments, Pennsylvania, Montana, but also most recently in New York. We want to emulate what they did. Big case, Pennsylvania, 2011, fracking industry got a super industry-friendly law passed. It was called Act 13. The governor got $1.7 million in campaign contributions that year. It would have compelled state municipalities to let fracking operations occur where anybody wanted them to occur. Well, much to their credit, a number of these municipalities took this issue, this legislature, to the courts, said it was unconstitutional. It went up to the Supreme Court, and lo and behold, that conservative court agreed. They said key provisions were unconstitutional. Why? Because it was in violation of their green amendment that Pennsylvania voters had voted to amend their constitution with back in 1972. We need the same level of protection. It's up here, it's above, it's out of the reach of the legislature to do some of the things that we have been talking about.
That sounds like a great segue to Melissa, the co-author, if I've got that right, of the Green Amendment.
Well, just to be clear, I co-authored the proposed constitutional amendment for Florida, which is considered a Green Amendment, but the phrase Green Amendment is actually coined by Maya Van Rossum, who is also an attorney in the Delaware Riverkeeper. And she had come to this epiphany through the case in Pennsylvania that Joe just talked about. And she wrote, without any co-authoring, she wrote the book of on green amendments.
Yeah,
so
I've seen
I
the
just wanted
book
to
at a climate conference. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
definitely clear.
Maya, Melissa, I got my M's mixed up, but welcome. We want to hear
thank
your
you.
participation, and your leadership matters greatly.
Thank you so much. My journey is a lot like a lot of folks who just realize that the current system is not working. So my background is actually, I grew up and fell in love with Florida, in Central Florida. So I had a career in the military that sent me to law school. So I'm a Florida bar certified attorney still, but I didn't really practice environmental law in the military. But when I came back, all those skills came to bear when I realized, okay, what is wrong with the system? Years of studying the problem set led me to the same conclusion that Maya came to, that others came to, that look, the system itself needs to be tweaked. We can't work within the system and expect different results. Like, I think there's a definition of insanity in there somewhere. Yeah. So the bottom line is that the crux of the problem is we trust by law our public officials to make the right choices in the public interest. I'll pause for effect.
Supposed to be, yeah, that way.
That's a false presumption these days, especially with years and decades of electoral issues, campaign financing issues. Legalized bribery is the bottom line. So with that in mind, we have to switch things up and account for the reality that is, and make it much more clear in the state constitution that no, actually, special interests fall below the public interest. The lack of clarity currently in state constitutions, and we're talking about the fundamental nature of this right in the Declaration of Rights, it has to have certain criteria in place in order to be a functional Green Amendment. Without that, it's just like any other right, it's just like any other law that the legislature can then play with to their will. And so we had to draft and design an approach that we ensured would be above the heads of politicians and political interests and special interests, and just allow or ensure the agencies in this case knew to the greatest degree possible that their duty was to serve the public interest, our health and safety, the wildlife, the environment, etc., above and beyond the reach of special interests. Without that, it's just same story, different day.
Business as usual. That's what got us here.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
So
in the ground rules, we're going to change the rules that they play by.
Yeah, and how important is the Montana ruling for what you are all working on?
I believe that it's very important in the awareness aspect. It's hard to get coverage in the news. As you probably know, the Montana case is primarily a climate action type of case. Montana and Pennsylvania both have decades of beautiful cases that have already codified and put into place and breathe life into their respective Green Amendments. So all of those cases are already proof positive that this would work in Florida. And I think that with Montana, it should be a huge party for all of the climate activists, the advocates that really have been bumping into brick walls this entire time. And hopefully they'll get to their epiphany that they do need to get behind the Green Amendment movement nationwide.
We don't have to dwell in politics, but just how bad has Governor DeSantis been for Florida's environment? I know the red algae issue finally got his attention because it was impacting the bottom line with tourism, if that's what it takes. But I would imagine, just based on his policies and his party, that he's not been a friend to nature in Florida, and would not be so with presidential position.
It is, oh, go ahead, Joe, you were talking.
Well, he does deserve credit for some things, and he deserves to be called out on others. He is allocating, billions of dollars towards cleanup of water from Lake O before it gets sent south. Hopefully, that will end up being as good as it is promised to be. But once again, focus is on cleaning up water after it's polluted. He's given almost no attention to stopping the pollution at the source. And this is an example where our amendment would come in. Lake O, we have releases water down the St. Lucie or the Caloosahatchee. That could give rise to a lawsuit. We take it to the court. The court takes a look and says, DEP, you got all these water basins around Lake Okeechobee that aren't meeting water quality standards. You're not doing enough enforcement. You're not doing enough monitoring. And the court can order the DEP, which is part of the executive branch of government under the governor, to do what it must do to protect our rights. I believe that enforcement under Governor DeSantis has actually gone down over the previous administration of Rick Scott. So I do think that is telling.
A couple of things in the news besides early debates in the Republican Party. We won't go there because I don't know if you were watching, but the climate question alone just was very discouraging. Since you and I met, Karl, in person in December of 2021, I think it was, of course, Sanibel Island, Captiva, in that area, Fort Myers, were wiped out by a hurricane. Which one was it? I can't keep up. There's so many.
Ian.
That's what I thought. Ian. Yeah. Do any of you know how the rebuilding process is going? And are they rebuilding right in the same place? I mean, Sanibel Island is kind of a strip, so I don't know where else, how far inland you can go. As I recall, we were there for the first time a year ago, March, and it was just beautiful. All the shells on the beach, and I hate to think what it is now.
So the little motel I owned on Matlacha had 6 feet of water inside it. Current owner has been able to put that back together. But the town is essentially changed forever. I was just there a week or so ago, and there's still homes that are still collapsed on their foundations, hanging into the water. Still derelict boats everywhere. Joe lived it. Joe's home was flooded. He had to remediate and remodel because of his experience with Ian. Sanibel and Fort Myers Beach, they're basically scarified, and they're very, very slowly being put back together.
Did you say sterified, like sterile?
Scarified. It's just wiped clean. But in that process of allowing rebuilding, why aren't we not talking about managed retreat and pulling back from the coastline now? Why isn't that conversation happening? Why aren't we they're going to do what they've always done. They don't do anything until the last minute. So they're going to build it right back out to the beach line.
Who can forget the collapse of the building in Surfside, in part because of beach erosion, I believe.
Betsy, can I address this for a moment? Because I was impacted by the hurricane. We did get flooded, as did all the houses down here.
Please.
It would have been worse. But I've got several hundred acres of wetlands behind my house, which gave us a lot of protection and a lot of flood control. When we moved down here in 2016, we were told, don't worry, no one's ever going to develop those wetlands. Well, guess what? Even after Ian, which you would think would be a game changer, that would make people look at things differently. Well, now somebody wants to develop. If our city council gives this a thumbs up, if the DEP gives this a thumbs up, which frequently happens, then we have very little recourse. But if we had this fundamental right to clean and healthy waters, then we would have recourse, because this would be a direct violation of that amendment. You know, it's destruction of these wetlands.
Yeah. Wetlands are, I'm so glad you brought that up. You know, they do provide protection, so key. You know, Mother Nature knows best. You know, this perfect, precious planet that we humans are screwing up. I have a grandchild on the way, and I started doing environmental media when my daughter was 2. She's going to be 29 on Thanksgiving, and that's when this baby is due. And I've seen the sonogram in black and white, and boy, I guess I'm good for another 20 years. You know, I mean, thinking about what this child is being born into and will only likely worsen. It's just, you know, I'm filled with delight and dread, quite frankly. So I'm sure all of you can relate. Loved ones in your life, whether they're children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, you know, pets, planet, it's all at stake. I think one of the most alarming headlines in the news recently is the ocean is boiling. Was that Antonio Guterres, UN, who said that? I know he said the climate is boiling, and then that got picked up. The ocean is boiling. It was 100 degrees or something. Was that a particular discrete part of the Florida coastline, or where did that come from?
So the 100-degree temperatures were monitored in the Florida Keys and basically in the Florida Bay. But even out at the reef line, we're seeing temperatures in the high 90s, 97, 98 degrees. I lived in the Florida Keys for 27 years. I never saw anything over like 92 degrees ever, just for short periods of time. This is sustained. You know, they're actually trying
the coral just is dying right and left, right? They can't survive this heat.
They're actually going out and harvesting it and bringing it in and put it in aquariums to try to salvage what's they can, so that they can put it back out there. Our coral reefs have already deteriorated from when I was a kid, from 70% hard coral growth down to 3 to 5%. This is essentially just going to wipe out every little bit that's left in the Florida Key reef system, all the way up to Jupiter, all the way up the east coast of Florida. Yeah, it's devastating. I've
had a couple of coral experts on over the last 2 years. I'm going to bring them back, but I almost hate, they're both so optimistic. One, David Guggenheim wrote a book about the coral reefs of Cuba, which he studied, and they were pristine somehow because Cuba is so unique. And that was a very upbeat book. And then Judy Burwald, I don't know if any of you have heard of her, but she wrote a book called Spineless about jellyfish, and then most recently about coral, Between a Rock and a Hard Place. And those two interviewees were about the most optimistic ones I've come across in 20 some odd years of interviewing solutionaries. I'm like afraid to ask them what they think. I don't want to see if they've lost their optimism. What keeps you each going with this news that just seems to get progressively worse without our leaders stepping up to actually wake up and smell the carbon and help us get off our gases, which is making all these problems worse? Ladies first. Go ahead, Melissa.
Well, for me, at least, what keeps me going is the need for education and awareness, because there are a couple. I delve into the field of human physics, is what I call it. Humans are very predictable. Organizations are very predictable. That, you know, psychology of things and group behavior. Politicians will always want power. Right. So that's a known, that's a known factor. Corporations will always want money. That's also a known. You can't really fault them for their own nature. So you can't expect more of them, you know, more out of them than what is, especially when the current, you know, the campaign financing system is allowing for the corruption issues to persist and continue to grow. That is reality. The more people that understand and grasp reality, the better. And that's when the solutions can come. If you continue to think that the best in politicians, the best in businesses, and the best in, you know, and things like that, and hope for the best, we're not going to move the needle. And I believe in the need to educate folks on that very specific fact. And so that's what gets me out of bed every day, and, you know, continue with this pro bono work.
I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah.
That's what gets me up every day is
Exactly.
pro bono work for 25 years. You
Yep.
know, and why don't they value we environmentalists, whatever we're doing to save nature a little bit more? It's part of the whole, I call it the green bias, but we won't get into that because we're almost out of time. But Joe, Karl, what keeps you going amidst and the Climate Act, $376 billion. That was a big boost, shot in the arm, right? Much needed.
True story. What keeps me going, I think, is changing the ground rules. We have decades of failure, and we need to create a new paradigm and even a cultural shift of how we view our ecosystems and how we exist in them. And we need to change the fundamental way we try to protect it. And that's what keeps me going, because the current system's not worked.
Education is key.
Education and awareness. One of my
An action, hopefully.
One of my sound bites is our number one environmental problem in Florida. It's all these things, but lack of awareness is the biggest one. And
Well,
until we
that's
make
our mission
everybody
here.
aware, until everybody's aware, it's going to be hard to get that paradigm and cultural shift achieved. So that's what
we say if everybody was aware and we were still doing as little as we are as a nation, as a species, then I'd be depressed. But as long as ignorance is an issue, there's hope, right? If we can get Green TV to reach everyone who eats, breathes, or drinks, maybe you guys can help us, so we can help you, so we can help that grandchild of mine and everybody else's to come. Joe, you seem optimistic, energetic. Are you from New York?
I am from New York, yes.
Okay, that's neither here nor there. I just had to ask because I love your accent. It came through.
Yeah, I guess I can't hide that. Well,
I don't know if that makes you an optimist, but it makes you real.
Well, in answer to your question really quickly, I think you fight for what you love. And I think the green bias you were talking about is part of that love. And certainly giving up and resignation is not an answer. I've got a grandchild too, and son and daughter, and it certainly upsets me to no end what we are doing to the natural world that we are leaving them. If I were them, in fact, I was just speaking to a class of college students today. They should be absolutely furious with us and be justified.
Yeah.
Educating them and getting them to act is key. Getting everybody to act is key.
Right. And it's not okay to just dump this on them and say, you fixed, we messed it up. Sorry, oops. Let them stay in school, let them focus on age appropriate concerns, social media, boyfriends, girlfriends, studies, not, is there going to be a planet for me to even get married and work in, let alone thrive. Okay, closing thoughts before we thank you for being part of this conversation.
I'd encourage everybody who's a registered Florida voter to please visit FloridaRightToCleanOrg.com. Print the petition, sign it, share it. If you can't print it, we will mail them to you. If anybody's interested in setting up a petitioning location, we provide all the materials to do that. So anybody that wants to contact us and set that up. Also, if anybody wants a speaker around the state of Florida, we can arrange to have speakers at any local meeting across the state. We have a network now of over several hundred volunteers. We have over 200 supporting organizations. And so we're here to stay. We're not going anywhere.
Good. So glad to hear that. And if a viewer is inspired by what all of you are doing, and I bet they are, and they don't live in Florida, what can they start in their state, or what can they learn from you? Joe or Melissa?
Well, they can undertake the same sort of thing that we are doing. In fact, Green Amendment movements are happening in a lot of different states because many people are realizing the system isn't working. This is the way to fix it.
Melissa, any parting thoughts?
I'll just add a couple websites. More information about the Green Amendment movement in various states can be found at forthegenerations.org. And of course, our Florida effort is found at floridarightToCleanwater.org.
I want to thank each and every one of you, all three of you, for the work you've been doing and your commitment to keep going. People say, I'm so committed. I say I may end up committed, but it's the people I interview that, keep me from having the environmental illness in a good way, not just a bad way. Knowing too much can be a hazard, as we know. So thank you so much. We want to encourage our viewers and our wonderful interviewees to please go subscribe to our YouTube channel, greentv.com. There's a couple of others, but make sure the dot's in the right place, greentv.com. And we want to start live streaming and be a green news network, GNN, not just CNN, but everything through the green glasses. And there's enough to talk about easily for 24/7 problems, solutions, and so many of you solutionaries out there, and people need hope. And there's real reason for hope because of the work that environmentalists, for lack of a better word, are doing. And we want to share that, and hope people can replicate it, scale it, amplify it. So thank you for your part, and please spread the word. We're all volunteer. We need to grow organically. And if we do, watch out, world, because I'm not shy. I got no job to lose. I got no paycheck to risk. But I have a grandchild on the way. So watch out, world.
Exactly. Mama
But thanks for having us again. Really appreciate your continued support.
Thanks, Beth.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so very much.
Be well, and we'll check back in when you have another big victory. Let's just think positive. We must, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.